Hello, welcome to this training session on Leadership Studies, a trait approach to leadership. My name is Jonathan W. Mitchell, and this is in completion of the Leadership Approach Theory Exploration final project for ELPA 6450. My primary source for this presentation is Leadership, Theory and Practice, a book by Peter Norhaus. The audience for my presentation will be first-year RAs, typically sophomores, could be juniors or seniors in college, but usually sophomores. Some goals of the presentation are that attendees will receive background and details on the trait approach to leadership. They will receive approach strengths and criticism, being exposed to alternatives or additions to trait approach over time. And they will begin to think about traits which they need to further develop in a new leadership role. Before we get into the details of trait approach, we just want to focus on a general description of traits. So the trait approach aims to identify certain traits which are present in leaders. So this is part for the audience to participate. Do you believe leaders have different traits that set them apart from followers? Pulling from past experiences, what are some traits that you've seen which set leaders apart from followers? Okay, I'm hearing good communicator. Okay, confidence, leader listening skills. Okay, personality, outgoing. Great, passion, dependable, motivated, smart. Okay, persistent. Okay, these are all great traits. And you will see these as a theme or pattern as we talk about the growing list of accepted leadership traits over time. So a little background on the trait approach. In the early 20th century, the trait approach became one of the first systematic attempts to study leadership. It was originally termed the Great Man Theory, attempted to identify traits of strong political, social, military leaders of the time, and believed people were born with these traits and followers did not have them, so they could not lead. Moving on to the mid-20th century, the trait approach was then challenged by researchers questioning the universality of leadership traits. They asserted that leaders in one setting may not be that in another setting, based on situations that were popping up. Reconceptualized leadership as a relationship between people in social situations relative to each individual situation. In the late 20th century, we're moving into the 80s and 90s now, the belief of natural presence of these traits, basically being born with these traits, reemerged. Some researchers in 1991 actually were quoted as saying it is equivocally clear that leaders are not like other people. And others found a strong connection between certain traits and people's perception of leadership. And lastly, on the trait approach background period from 2008 to present, the candidacy, election, and eventual presidency of Barack Obama has shifted emphasis towards visionary and charismatic leadership. And in 2006, before Barack Obama's election, researchers found that charismatic leaders share certain traits and provided a list of self-monitoring, engagement and impression management, motivation to attain social power, and motivation to attain self-actualization. Two key surveys pertaining to trait approach were performed by Stochdale. The first in 1948, where he analyzed 124 other trait studies and actually culminated them to find 8 recurrent traits in leaders relative to situations. The first, intelligence, alertness, insight, responsibility, initiative, persistence, self-confidence, and sociability. The second culminating survey, also performed by Stochdale, happened in 1974. It analyzed 163 new trait studies that had happened since his previous study and found 10 recurrent traits or characteristics in leaders, both naturally occurring and relative to situations. These were the drive for responsibility and task completion, vigor and persistence in pursuit of goals, risk-taking and originality in problem-solving, the drive to exercise initiative in social situations, self-confidence and sense of personal identity, willingness to accept consequences of decisions and actions, readiness to absorb interpersonal stress, willingness to tolerate frustration and delay, ability to influence other people's behavior, and a capacity to structure social interaction systems to the purpose at hand. So with this next slide, you're probably starting to see that just the list keeps growing and growing of potential traits that could lead to quality leadership. And I will discuss that in the following slides. Gardner in the early 90s published research of a large number of leaders and came to these following traits: physical vitality and stamina, intelligence and action-oriented judgment, eagerness to accept responsibility, task competence, understanding of followers and their needs, skill in dealing with people, need for achievement, capacity to motivate people, courage and resolution, trustworthiness, decisiveness, self-confidence, assertiveness, and adaptability. So you are starting to see some crossover in these lists. You're starting to notice some themes that keep showing up, and we will talk about that here in just a moment. Kirkpatrick and Locke, also in the early 90s, synthesized some earlier research to determine leaders differ from non-leaders in 6 ways: drive, motivation, integrity, confidence, cognitive ability, and task knowledge. And they refer to this as the right stuff for leadership. So this slide just sort of summarizes all the various traits that have been found through research over the years, starting in 1948 with the Stodge deal, which I already spoke about, all the way up to 2017. This resource comes directly out of the book by Peter Norhaus I cited on the front slide of the presentation. So I'll just give you a moment to look over this list, and we will move on. So in seeking some current assessments, maybe even free assessments that you all could take to determine if you have certain leadership traits, I stumbled upon an online trait leadership assessment from 2019. It's up to date as of 2019, which measures these following traits, which they cited: drive for performance, resilience and adaptability, leading boldly, coaching and developing people, engaging teams, promoting teamwork, resolving conflict, leading strategically, leveraging innovation, and managing and organizing. So these are not necessarily based on any particular research, but are things that this business organization is assessing in terms of trait leadership. Okay, so let's start narrowing this in a little bit. You've had 3 or 4 slides here of long lists of traits which could lead to good leadership. But from that figure 2 slides back, 5 themes seem to emerge. So at this time, as of the 2019 Peter Norhaus book, these are accepted as the most common traits found in leaders: intelligence, self-confidence, determination, integrity, and sociability. And if you are watching this and rewind back to that slide, you will see that almost every word in that chart fits into one of these 5 categories. So these either showed up recurrently in multiple research, or certain words within that can fit into one of these 5 categories. So let's break these 5 down a little bit more. Intelligence, the first one listed. The book defines that as a strong verbal ability, perceptual ability, and reasoning. but it's best paired with other traits, else it could be counterproductive. Per one study in 2017 by Antonakis and others, as IQ increased past a certain point, perceived leadership actually decreased. Why do you think that might be? Self-confidence is the ability to be certain about one's competencies and skills. It includes self-esteem, self-assurance, and the belief that you can make a difference with your work. Determination is the desire to get the job done. It includes initiative, persistence, dominance, drive, all these words you saw in that chart several slides back. Willing to assert oneself, being proactive, and having the capacity to persevere in the face of obstacles. Integrity is defined as having the quality of honesty and trustworthiness, the ability to adhere to a strong set of principles, and taking responsibility for your actions. And sociability, the item which I feel ties all these together, is the inclination to seek out pleasant social relationships, being friendly, outgoing, courteous, tactful, diplomatic, again, words which you saw in the table, sensitive to others' needs and show concern for their well-being, good interpersonal skills, and creating cooperative relationships with their followers. So some strengths to the trait approach is that it's intuitively appealing. It fits our opinion of what a leader should be. It's very straightforward, and it focuses solely on the leader and doesn't necessarily take followers and their different personalities and traits into account. It's backed up by a century of research, much longer than any other of the leadership frameworks you may find out there. And it provides some benchmarks from which you can measure yourself and other leaders in your organization. Some criticisms of the trait approach is, as you are likely feeling, a criticism right now is a failure to funnel to a definitive list. Through all the research, there really has just been a failure to narrow it down a little bit. The seemingly endless possibilities of traits, but Northouse did well to funnel it down to 5 for his writings. There's a failure to take situations into account. It's highly subjective. Most of the surveys are of people who have leaders and how they perceive them and what they have, so it's all just subjective to what people see as a leader. Does not connect traits to outcomes, so you could be a great leader but not get anything done, I suppose. So it's also not useful for training and development because traits are not easily changed, and as some of the research indicates, you're born this way. You are a leader and have these traits, or you are not. So here are some related frameworks for further research if you're interested in this sort of thing. 5-factor personality model, strengths, specifically StrengthsFinder by Clifton Strengths, or an emotional intelligence. Look those things up if you have further interest in this subject. So here are some related free assessments for further development. There are a lot of assessments out there for organizations, but a lot of them you have to pay for. So these are free ones, and it was sort of hard to find assessments that specifically assess leadership traits. A lot of them, when you search leadership assessments, will come up with leadership skills. And those are also helpful. Anything you can take to better yourself and grow and develop as a leader is beneficial. So the first, VIA Institute on Character, also OGO Lead, are you heartwired or hardwired? And also this one doesn't necessarily have a website, but it's just a 3x3 assessment. So just have your superior, after they have watched you for a bit in the RA job, have them list your 3 greatest strengths and 3 greatest weaknesses that they feel like you could work on, and continue doing that as you move through your leadership path. Here are the references, complete set of references for this presentation.
some websites, obviously the Norrie-House book and other resources, which were also linked in the Norrie-House book, but I linked directly to those sources where those items came from. I appreciate you all listening to this presentation, and I wish you luck in your leadership journey as first year as an RA. Thank you. Bye-bye.